Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. We believe that dads matter. That's why this show is for you. So gear up, dads. Get ready. It's time to start climbing. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Our guest is Frankie Russo. Frankie, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Oh, thank you, George. Happy to be here.
Looking forward to it, man. So let me quickly introduce you to our audience who may not know you, but Frankie Russo is I'd say a serial investor, entrepreneur, really successful. You wrote a big book called Breaking Why. I believe it was Amazon's on the list of top sellers. And, you're a father, blended family, so we're going to talk about that. And you are also a personal friend of the Blinsons. You've known, I think, Justin the longest, right? So
yeah.
Welcome to the show, man. We're really looking forward to hearing from your story, learning from you, and just talking about fatherhood. So awesome. Brandon, I think, actually had the leading questions for you. He's been working on this one for a while, so I'll kick it over to Brandon.
I can't wait to hear what I have to say after all that.
Well, Frankie, man, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. I wanted to dive right into the beginning of your story as far as like your blended family. Let's go into that real quick. So start off with that if you don't mind.
Yeah. So it starts. It's how far back? Like the birds and the bees, or what do you mean?
No.
Okay, gotcha. I don't know.
That's a whole separate episode. We'll have to do that one later. How to have that conversation with your kids.
How to become a father, literally.
Yeah. I'm really good at it. I apparently can only have girls biologically. I have two amazing sons, stepsons. They're 8 years old. They're twins. But I've had two different marriages, tried to have kids with two different women, and they're always girls. So it's clearly me who's the problem. But girls are awesome. Being a dad to girls is awesome. But the beautiful thing about my life now is that I get to have it both ways. I've got two twin boys, and then I have four girls, ranging from the age 5 up to 13. So we're still really in the heat of the battle. Amazing case study on what to do, what not to do. And so really loving life at this point. The journey to get to a blended family is quite a journey because obviously you got to go through a divorce to do that. But I will tell you that my journey is not necessarily everyone's journey, but for me, I got married really young. So I got married at 18, came from a religious background, don't have sex until you're married. You know, if you're going to date, that means you're also courting for marriage. So don't F it up. You know what I'm saying? And so that was kind of the deal, right? That's what you did. So I got married young. And in hindsight, the one thing I would tell my kids, because I've thought a lot about this, I got divorced 6 years ago. So what it was is that I kind of came to this crossroads after having 3 kids, which is pretty crazy. And I just couldn't continue on and also live wholeheartedly. And so a lot of my journey was a lot less about my relationship, a lot more with authenticity. And ironically, the first book I wrote, The Art of Why, I wrote it right before I got divorced. So it was interesting because that book was called Master Your Purpose. So I still kind of laugh at it because it was like, everyone said, by the way, don't write a book till you're 40. How old are you, Brandon?
I'm 38.
38. Good. You're close enough. So I was like, I'm not going to listen to those people. They don't know what they're talking about. So I wrote a book at 35, and had it not been for the fact that it allows for me to have 2 books, I would have scorched the earth with the first book, because it was the climax of me thinking I knew what the hell was going on in life and how to navigate this life and master your purpose. And I couldn't have been further from it in the moment I released it. But hey, that's part of the journey. I mean, quite frankly, that writing that book was very difficult. That first one, I had a lot of ghostwriters, and it was difficult because I was literally just trying to kind of write a book and check the box and all that fun stuff. And I was checking all kinds of boxes, bought a big house. That's now I live next to Justin. And literally 2 months later, it was like, I looked in the mirror and was like, what the hell is going on here? Because I had kind of checked all the boxes, and it was scary. And so that's really where that journey began, of like going from the picture perfect scenario, right? Doing all the right things for all the people, and pretty good at it, to be honest. I was really good at being everything I needed to be for everybody else. Um, and that's not a sustainable life.
Right.
And it comes at a cost. Even though I thought that that was how you make everyone happy, and then everybody's happy. We were joking before we hit record, like happy wife, happy life. Um, mm,
Happy
I don't know
spouse,
about
happy
that. You
house.
know,
That's it, man.
yeah, happy spouse, happy house. I don't know. Money maybe can buy you happiness. No, I'm just kidding. But it was interesting, and it was a difficult journey. I wouldn't wish that transition to where went from having 3 kids to having 6 kids. I wouldn't wish that transition on my worst enemy. Uh, but mostly because of the journey I had to go on to become my authentic self. And quite frankly, a lot of people to this day don't really like me, especially from that community of people that expected me to be a certain way. And I don't blame them. I created this world that in some ways I let them down because they were expecting me to be X and I ended up being Y. And not everybody is comfortable with that. And I had to make some really hard decisions to be authentic to myself, be honest. Um, and it's actually surprisingly made me a better father. Because the truth is, you can stay together, and a lot of people suggest this, and I know this is a very long answer to your question, but I hope that's okay.
Totally fine.
But it'll set the stage for some of this stuff, because here's the deal. A lot of people told me some very surprising things when I went through my divorce. They're like, why don't you just make an arrangement? Or why don't you just wait till the kids get out of high school, or things like that, right? And it was one of those things where I would have loved to do that, but I couldn't get back into the box. Once I was awakened to what my reality was, I couldn't go back. And it happens to people when they get together too young and maybe for the wrong reasons. And you try your best, but some things aren't right to try to force. And that's where I found myself. And it was difficult. But the person I was able to be on the other side is worth it. And that person is somebody who is the same no matter what room I'm in. And I was never able to be that. And quite frankly, it was a person who was driven by what everybody else wanted and thought. And today, when people don't like me or think certain things about me, I've finally become immune to it. And I can still love them, and I don't have to take offense to it. And that's a good, healthy, clean way to live. Now, I will tell you the trade-off in my experience with the authenticity deal, where you get to a point where you no longer care what people think about you. It's possible to achieve that. I live that. Now, it's one day at a time, but I am living that right now. However, I had to trade also the things that people say good about me. So the things people say good about me that used to play on my ego, that it was a rush or an adrenaline or it felt good, I will say I don't feel that anymore either. So you have to trade both out. You can't have them both ways. Like I had to lay down the obsessive addiction to people approving me, or the addiction to having people love me or think that I'm doing a good job. You lay that down and you can lay the other one down with it. So anyway, that's a super long answer. The baby is the yours is the ours. So you got the yours, mine, and ours. The baby
Right.
that's 5 is ours. So
No, that's a great
yeah,
answer.
yep, modern Brady Bunch.
Yeah,
Listen, so one thing that you've mentioned, you said you were doing everything for everyone but yourself. And that's kind of a clarifying statement. What were some of the tribulations or events that kind of made you aware that you were doing that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first time that happened, I've gone in stages with this, right? So the first time I realized I was like too focused on everyone else was the levels I went to hide my drug addiction and alcoholism. So in my 20s, what I didn't mention was at 26, almost 27, I got sober, and that really is something that is the first time I realized how much what links I was willing to go to appease people. Like, so my first wife, like, didn't believe in drugs at all. She thought that crack or heroin was the same level as smoking weed, so, anything was bad. Right. So I hid years of addiction, like right in plain daylight, where she couldn't see it, but it was like a huge thing. And I was willing to, um, what's the word? I guess we could say compromise myself from an honesty and authenticity space. And so I thought once I got sober that would kind of fix that. And it did for a little while. Getting sober was a huge part of my story. What I've realized since then is that the part that was big about getting sober was less about me getting sober and staying sober for the last 15 years and more about the hundreds of guys I've been able to help get sober. That's been a huge part of my journey, that eventually led to the next bottom, which was when I got my divorce. And it was a little bit of a controversy. I fell in love with the person who's now my wife, Justin's neighbor. And so that didn't make it any easier. That's where a lot of the kind of Christian pitchforks came out. I tried to fix it. I tried to go back and it was actually, speaking very vulnerably, like that was something that was really hard on Tracy, my wife now, because I really was trying to be authentic. I was desperately trying to be authentic. And so what that looked like was like trying to get back in the box, trying to fix it. And again, people were like, why don't you just, make an arrangement or whatever. And I was like, no, you don't get it. Like, I'm not just out of my mind right now. I'm stone cold sober, and I'm realizing I don't want to live like this anymore, And so I always say that, what I went through in 2017 was not that different from anyone else. The difference is that I was willing to do it out in the open. And that is painful at first, but sets you free at a level that you're immune. Like all the people in the world that I was worried about letting down, I let them down, and they're probably still let down. And what a great way to live.
Yeah, I mean, I guess since I've been through a divorce. I don't know if you do that. I don't think I ever told you that, but
no, I didn't.
George and Dustin were there for me. They knew my ex-wife. They were there every step, and I can say that I can relate to some of the things you just said, because authenticity is like, you have to be true to yourself before you can be true to others. And I think the thing that kind of touched home, and I actually have a question based off of that, is, do you think that you gave so much of yourself to others that you never gave to yourself? Does that make sense? That you felt empty because you just filled other people's cups and not your own? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, no, it makes total sense. And I've thought a lot about that. I think a lot of it boils down to motives, like why I was giving. So when I've given of myself, like, let's say, like for sobriety, right, where I am volunteering essentially for an anonymous, unspoken role of helping somebody, there's not a lot of motives other than like what I get back in return. Right. So that's a clean, unconditional setting for being able to practice unconditional love, right? To actually help somebody that's in need or that's poor. So when you think about that type of stuff always has paid for me. It's more where I try to help others that with conditions. So anytime I've helped others with conditions, that's usually the setup. That's when I don't feel fulfilled. So now it's like, if I can't help someone unconditionally, I'm okay with not helping them, and that sometimes becomes the boundary. I'm blessed enough to have, a family, a wife, and 6 kids, that I love somewhat unconditionally. It's still somewhat conditional, right? No matter how you split it. And then I exercise outside of the family an opportunity to help men get sober and essentially find God, to be honest. And so that I have both of those that are very fulfilling for me. I talk about that a lot in my books, and essentially that's the lifeblood of what I believe our highest human purpose is.
I'm actually going to touch on something you just said there. So I struggled with the commitment I made before God with my previous marriage. That's actually something I talked very in depth with George about. Was that something that really, really weighed on your heart a lot when you're going through the divorce? Because I know for me personally, it was not easy to carry that weight.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, that weighed unnaturally high on it. That like I was somehow severing my connection with God. And it took me a solid 6 months to get there on the journey and go through all the different things. I, hired therapists to like, do intensives with me. I had 2 therapists at the same time, like went to do experiential therapy in Tennessee. I mean, I was throwing everything at it. And in the end, it was actually my dad, because my dad, so I got a little glimpse of what it feels like to come out of the closet when I went through this. And coming out of the closet, I have a new appreciation for people that do that, and they absolutely have it worse than me. So I'm not comparing what I went through to that in any way for anyone who's listening, because it's not at the same level. I got a glimpse of it, but my dad did come out of the closet after being married for 33 years and in ministry, by the way. So he's, the pitchforks are so much bigger and so much hotter for him than me, as far as, and I'm not talking about the devil's pitchforks. I mean, like the locals. So it was actually him, because I asked him, I was like, man, how do you deal with that? Like, because I kept thinking and telling him, it's like, I know in my heart that like the God that I believe in will forgive me. And so why am I wrestling with it? And he said, and I don't know why, this just stuck with me. He said, at some point, you've got to forgive yourself. And in that moment, like something just broke. And like ever since then, like my journey as a person who doesn't have to hide who I am anymore or any of that was set free. And essentially that's what it comes down to. The shame is predominantly self-inflicted. I mean, because now that I look back, like lately, like ironically, like just recently, I've been every night reading from this little illustrated Bible to the kids. And like, this is very new for me. And like, not this, I'm not like that guy, right? Like I go to church twice a year. And again, nothing against church. And I actually believe in a lot of that stuff, but I just am cut a little different. It's the product of being a minister's child, right? Grew up in homeless shelters doing ministry. So most preachers' kids are a little off. A lot of them are worse than me. I'm not going to name their names on the air, but you know who you are if you're listening. But anyway, I've been reading these children's stories, and what's awesome about it is that they don't have a lot of color in them, and they skip a lot of stories. Like when you're doing King David, it's like he does a slingshot, then he writes some songs, and they leave out anything about Bathsheba and all that fun stuff, so I don't color in the Bathsheba stuff, but I do take liberty in like helping them understand some of the stuff that's not in there. That's really good stuff. And I've been really enjoying that. So I don't know why I just brought that up, but it's been one of those things that has surprised me. And like my wife just loves it. The kids love it. It's such a simple little thing. And what's funny is my kids have been in every private school in Lafayette. And so I told my wife, if we switch schools one more time, she's going to have to start Tracy's List, which is essentially like a way for me to make money on all the different information we have on every school. I'm talking Episcopal, Baptist, classical, Renaissance, non-denominational. We've been to so many schools. But what was cool is like every story in this book, my 2 twin boys, they know it, right? So like, I didn't realize that about them. I knew, my first wife, she's doesn't miss a church service, right? So I know my other 3 girls, they know all the stories, right? But they know them, exactly how they're told. But I was surprised. And it was actually the Catholics. God bless their heart. I said, look, I told my wife that last night. I said, you got some good Catholic boys. Now she took them out of Catholic school because she wasn't into the whole worship and Mary thing. But she Now they're Episcopal, by the way, which is like so much better. But anyway, so it's been cool because they do already know the stories, and they're in second grade. You know, they already know a lot of that stuff, but it's actually the stuff in between the stories that I think is what's so gold in that. And I haven't really been in a space where I was really talking about that stuff in such a I see that, Dustin.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
No,
as we should.
So it's funny you mentioned your dad in that whole situation. So my father and I took a walk when I was contemplating what I was going to do, because it was such a pivotal part of my life, and it completely changed my world. And I'll never forget this. My father said, "Look, Justin, are you happy?" I said, "No, Dad, I'm not happy." And I have a wonderful father. He's always been involved in our lives. Brendan can attest to this. He's just been, he had a crap upbringing, just horrible story, just anything that could go wrong in his life went wrong. And so he never let anything translate to our generation. And I'm so appreciative because he's the one person I trusted as my best friend to just go and be raw with. Cause I had like friends that were like, "Justin, I don't recognize who you are. This is not the person I grew up with." I get hurt. Like my best friend Harold told me, I've known him since kindergarten. He's like, "Dude, I don't even recognize who you are." And I'm like, oof. So I asked my dad, I said, "Do you recognize who I am?" He said, "Yeah, you're just lost." And I was like, okay. And I said, "Well, how do I get found again?" And he started laughing, and we were just on this, I'll never forget it. It's right around this time of year. It was just getting cooler. He said, "The way you get found is he's like, just pray about it." So I started praying, and I was like, what's the answer? You know, like, and surely I started seeing signs and things. And he said, "Look, do what's on your heart, and stop listening to your brain so much." And so I did what was on my heart. And unfortunately I did get the divorce, but it led me to where I'm at. And I'll never forget, he said, "Look, Justin, you're a bright guy. You're in the medical field." He's like, "You may end up marrying a doctor." Jokes aside, I ended up marrying a pediatric dentist. Obviously, you know that. And now we have our beautiful son, and in 7 weeks we'll have our daughter. So it's like all these things that he said, don't be afraid of taking that launch.
I didn't realize you guys were expecting.
Yeah, man. Ainsley's doing 7-8 weeks.
Now you just outed yourself. You got to get something on the registry now.
Yeah, that, but also tell Ainsley that I didn't even notice. So
hey, you just won brownie points, my friend.
I didn't even mean to do that, but I make sure she knows. I had no idea.
She's gonna love you for that. But yeah, we got a little girl on the way, Sophia Scott. Yeah.
That's awesome.
We're excited, but like, just my life took a complete 180 just because I had a great father who gave me great advice and believed in me and said, "Hey, look, take the step that you feel is right for you." And so that's what I did. Like you said, it's authenticity to yourself. And that was the hardest step to take, is being authentic to yourself. I can't describe how much stress and how much angst and everything you feel being torn between people's viewpoints, caring about what other people think, what you think about yourself or what you think about God. Just all those factors play in, and it weighs so heavy. And then you stop and think. And like, I think one of the things that I thought to myself, and my brother Jordan kind of helped me with, was, you know, what are the things Christ would do in your situations? Like, you know, think about like how heavy things were for him versus how heavy it is for you. And I was like, ooh, nothing I have is heavy at all if I think about that. Like, so yeah, I feel like, you know, if he can carry all that, you know, I can carry this. So yeah, it ended up working out. So I appreciate what you said, you know, about your father and everything, and going to him for advice, because I'm telling you what, that's what we base this show off is fathers and the advice they give. I mean, sometimes it's not the greatest advice, but it's advice, and it's somebody you trust and you know has always got your back, as long as they're a good father. And being present, man, that's what we preach. If you're a present father, just being present, whether the advice is good or not, is something that helps your child. You know,
absolutely.
I mean? So
absolutely. And not feeling alone in that moment when you're going through that is critical.
100%.
Especially if it's from a father.
Yeah. And if you're not being authentic, you can have 100 friends and you'll still feel alone because they're not really being with you. They're being with the person you're pretending to be. So I struggled with that for years. I think I had prom queen syndrome. I wanted everyone to like me. And so I said whatever it took for people to like me. And that led to, if not, you know, some form of dishonesty, then just outright lies, because I knew this is what I have to say for people to like me. So I think I had some of your experience when I was younger. What I wonder though is, can you be someone who genuinely doesn't care about what other people think when you're a young man? Can be a 12, a 15, a 20-year-old man and just do that? Or do you have to earn it? Do you have to get to a point where you're successful, where it doesn't matter? Because at some point, I think for younger men or for less successful men, if you don't care about what other people think, you may be in a position to get fired or, you might not get through school. And so I wonder, is it a season of life? Do you have to earn the right to not care what other people think?
Yeah. So I'll answer that a couple ways. So first of all, I want to kind of clarify, not caring what people think does not mean that like I don't honor people that I care about, right? Or even people I don't care about. It's not that I don't look at it, because one thing that I don't want to give the impression on is that I'm in that like mindset of like, F them, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't give a shit what anybody thinks kind of thing, like that type of mentality. That's not authenticity. So I hear them and I see them and I don't allow it to affect the way that I look at myself, unless it's feedback that is useful. Right. So usually my easy litmus test is that I only take feedback from people that I actually want to be like, or that I trust. If I don't know you and you're just giving me feedback on social media, or I had this crazy situation where like somebody yelled out in the middle of a talk recently that I was doing in New Orleans. We'll circle back to that because I don't want to derail this answer, but it was interesting. Anyway, when those things happen, do you have to earn it? Yes, to a degree you do have to earn it, but not with success. Okay, because a lot of the people that I work with, I've seen them become free from those chains of what people think about me mattering so much without getting successful from like a money standpoint or having things and any of that stuff. They still have nothing, but they have God, they have sobriety, and they have a community, and they are already starting to get some of the same things I have. So I don't think it's necessarily tied to having stuff. But it's absolutely tied to experiences that you kind of have to go through. And I think it's almost like the order of things, right? Like most of us on this call are, I think, north of 35. Is everybody north of 35? Essentially. Yeah. George, are you north of 35? Yes. Okay. So yeah, we're north of 35.
Sorry. 10 days and I'm 35.
Yeah. So whatever. You're right there. Write a book called Mastering Your Purpose and you'll be there. So that's how old I was. At 35. That's easy. Nothing to it. You got ChatGPT. I didn't have ChatGPT. All right. I had to pay full freight for my ghostwriter.
I love it.
Yeah. Now it's easy. I'm gonna write 3 books a year. But anyway,
Brandon's gonna have 12.
Yeah. That's it. Dustin, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think you earn it through experiences. I don't think you earn it necessarily like getting to a point where you can be like, I don't care what you think about me because I'm like the man. It can't be an ego thing because it will fail every time.
That is a really important nuance to consider. Definitely. Yeah, you never want to think, you still need to take criticism. And if you're making a mistake, you need to take that in. So yeah, no, I think that's an important.
Oh God. Yeah. No, I take a lot of feedback, by the way. Like it's really the negative. Like if somebody doesn't like me, right? Or they don't like my book, or they don't like my talk, or they think that like, this guy that was yelling at me, I'll just tell you guys, because he's probably not watching this podcast, but if he is, listen, I love you, man. But here's the thing. This guy's from Canada. It was a talk to 600 people that are in a union. Okay. They're electrical workers. And some of you guys are from Louisiana. Okay. So most people in Louisiana don't really know what a union is barely. And I got referred to this thing and I was just going to do a motivational talk. It was supposed to be a quick 20-minute mic drop. I even had a t-shirt gun and we were shooting t-shirts out the gun at the end, which was awesome. But like somewhere in the middle of it, I was talking about imagination and how to unlock that. And I have this exercise called What If? And it's like, what if money didn't matter? Or what if like time and space wasn't a thing? What could we do? What would you do? And this guy starts yelling, I would end capitalism. Capitalism's the problem. And how many union employees do you employ? And how much union busting have you done? And first of all, I didn't even know half the stuff he was saying. So I just had to kind of pause, and then he walked out, thank God. But that type of moment, it's like, what just happened in front of 600 people? Like, what? and they apologized and all that fun stuff. But turns out there's some guy named Frank Russo from up north that made millions in the 90s as a union busting. I don't even know what that was. And so there's this whole Reddit now of Frankie Russo, this crazy venture capitalist that was hired by the unions to do a motivational speak. He comes from a legacy of union busters, by the way. So I have a Reddit now. I wasn't even on Reddit before this. So like, there's all these like people that hate me because I'm a capitalist, and my uncle, who's dead now, who's not really my uncle, by the way, if you're listening. I'm not married to Frank Russo, who's a union buster. So, but there you go. So it's like, I could have let that just demolish me. Like, man, should I not do talks anymore? Like, am I a capitalist? Am I doing the wrong thing? And you have a minute where it's like, what the fuck just happens? You have to bleep that out, George. But then it's like you recover from it, because it's like,
well, we missed an opportunity. We should have introduced you, Frankie Russo Capital.
Union buster. Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Apparently I'm the problem.
I Googled Frank Rousseau and you did not come up.
Problem.
He came up. I can see what you're talking about. There was a lot of visceral articles. I'll put it like that. Apparently he's passed away now.
And
there was a lot of articles about like, this criminal dude has passed away now, blah, blah. Anyway, and I was like, I don't think that's who we're interviewing. Let me double check the spelling here.
You got to add the IE, and then it's a whole different.
Add the IE. Oh, there he is. Okay, all right, that looks right.
There's the good stuff. Yeah.
So
luckily,
that's an unfortunate coincidence for you.
So kind of an interesting.
It happens. Go ahead, Dustin. Sorry.
So kind of an interesting change that happened recently on Twitter X is that you can make money for impressions. So essentially, the more people look at your stuff, the more money you make. And so when people comment, that is what pushes your information to the top. So if someone likes your post, if they repost it, any of that kind of stuff, doesn't matter. But if someone comments on your post, you to the moon, right? With that. So your haters are literally making you money. If you post, I like capitalism.
I love it.
Someone says,
I get on X.
Yeah, literally, they're helping you make money. It's amazing. So literally, your haters are your best friends, because if people like you, they're just going to click like and just leave it alone, right? Oh, nice, whatever. It doesn't help you. But if someone legitimately is so angry that they feel the need to post something hateful in response, they're literally printing money for you. So your haters are actually your best friend on social media in that sense. That was a really kind of cool way to think about it.
You shouldn't have told me that.
Yeah, Justin is about to go find that Reddit thing and like really light it up. But when you hang back, if you look at it, there was a whole lot of people that came and apologized. There's people on the Reddit like saying, when your motives are pure. I mean, I was only in that room. I didn't make a lot of money from that, and not in the grand scheme of like the kind of money I've made in my life. And like, I'm doing it because it's a calling, and I want to help the people in that room. And I kept going because there were 598 other people in the room that maybe not all of them were wanting something, but some of them were there, and I got hired to do a job. It's like, I'm not going to stop because one person or his table is going to run off, because at the end of the day, like the work that we do, I mean, for God's sakes, I'm calling out authenticity, imagination, and generosity at a union festival. So it's like, most of the time, there's situations where maybe that stuff's not welcomed in that setting, but it doesn't change the fact that if you want to unlock growth and you'd like to be maybe a little happier than feeling like you got to yell at people in the middle of talks, because clearly like he's angry at somebody, which probably is that.
It's not you.
Yeah. Yeah, it can't be. He doesn't even know me good enough. I mean, maybe it's Frank Russo, like the schmuck that actually stole money from unions, which I clearly don't agree with. But yeah, who knows? You never know what they're going through, and I think that's important that you always look at that. You never know what these people are going through. Whoever it is that hates, it's like it. So you have to look at that anyway.
I wanted to just dig a little bit deeper into the whole, not caring what other people say, and you clarified it in that it's not the F you attitude. From your upbringing and to kind of early success and things like that, is it? I think I can relate a lot because I think we had similar upbringings in that regard. Very religious homes and all, and what what's expected and all those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
it was more from a, you weren't, how do I phrase this? It's almost like you weren't given the right to love yourself as you are type of thing. And so you had to do all these things and be successful, or you had to check all the boxes. So it's almost like a false persona. Is that what it is? And like you were in a way lacking a form of true confidence in yourself because it was all these external things?
Yeah.
Or was it different?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, look, we grew up with a lot of pretense. Like, so the one thing I've learned about like the whole religious like space is that the bar is so high that it leaves people no choice but to lie to say that they're at that bar. So one of the things I loved about getting into like sobriety and recovery is that, you know, in church, if you, you know, have an affair, or if you get caught stealing, or whatever, you know, cardinal sin you do, nobody wants to sit by you on the pew, right? So it's like, you know, I mean, it's literally like, don't come by me. I don't want you to F up my life. But then when you get into recovery, if you start saying things like, "Oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem." We're like, "Oh, I don't want you effing up my life." It's literally the exact opposite. It's like you walk in, you know what you are. That's why we're here. Nobody's arguing that. Nobody's accidentally showing up here. And we start from there, you know, and
Okay.
that's where that's a big difference, is where you start with, I know that I am an alcoholic, for example. Okay.
Right.
And I don't try to hide that. And
Yeah.
when I start from there, it actually is what enables all of the growth. And so I think, you know, pretense plays a big role, and it's a setup, you know. And so we try to do things a little bit differently in my household now with the kids, you know, and it's not always easy, because the truth is what we really want to give them in the moment is sometimes difficult to do. So we have to keep circling back. And a lot of my work in my new book, which is called Love Your Weird, that I'm working on, that ChatGPT is not writing. A lot of it is about, if you want to unlock authenticity, you want to unlock imagination, you want to unlock generosity, purpose, selflessness, then be like you were when you were 5. Start being like you were when you were 5. When I was 5, you know, one of the things that happened, and I think, George, did I see in the chat you went to onsite?
Yeah, I did. When you said you went to experiential treatment in Tennessee, I don't want to out
it's
you
like
or something, but yeah,
Oh,
I've been to
no,
onsite.
it's hell yeah. When was that?
So I've actually been twice.
I've been 3 times.
We went, so my wife and I went together. We kind of did it backwards. We went together for a couple's week. That was in 2017, maybe
Nice.
16, 17. And then I went back again. They did like a veteran one type, where so everyone, there's like veteran law enforcement and stuff. And that was,
Nice.
I think, maybe like a year later or so. And then my wife went also for individual. So the way you should do it is you go individual to work on your stuff. Then you go as a couple to work on like the marriage stuff. And so I don't know how much that plays into you, you know, with your first marriage and then with your current one, but that's something that, you know, I've learned the hard way is the dysfunctions that you have from your childhood, if not addressed prior to marriage, will come out, and they're going to be very difficult to sort out, because now you're just creating new sets of wounds that your spouse is totally blindsided by, because like, whoa, where'd this come from? And you'll react completely irrationally to things that your spouse is being healthy with, you know, just basic, you know, adulting. And your inner child comes out and lashes out. And I'm not saying be a victim and like blame your parents. No, go sort it out. Be a man about it. Go dig into it. Get help for it. Anyway, so that's really getting off into the weeds here, but
but look, not really. You're not really getting off in the weeds. You're actually getting right into the middle of this thing.
So I don't know how much I meant for your initial question of just going, but yeah.
No. But no, this is, you know, I'm a big fan of onsite. In fact, I hope to create experiences similar to onsite down here in Louisiana at some point. So I'm very passionate about that. And I'm not a therapist or anything like that. I love doing the work. It's changed my life. And one of the biggest things, besides taking my phone for a week my wife and I went separate, then we went together, and then I went to Colorado and did the equine at a dude ranch, which was friggin' awesome. It was right before what's it called? Yellowstone came out.
Oh,
And
okay, gotcha.
So like between Yellowstone and then doing this experiential therapy on a horse, I bought like so many cowboy boots, cowboy hat. Like I was like,
My man.
I was going hard on the Yellowstone thing for a while. And then about a year ago, I realized, damn it, everybody's doing this. And so now it's kind of a thing that, like, unless I buy a ranch, which I ended up buying the second house on the river instead, but unless I get a ranch, like I'm not going to pull this off. So I still wear the cowboy boots because my inner child was a cowboy, but it was also a TV preacher, an astronaut, and an inventor, which, by the way, I figured out through the on-site stuff. So I think that's big. I don't think you can be authentic without re-embracing who you changed, because essentially 5 or 6 is the work they do at on-site. For those of you who haven't been, you know, there's different ways that they have you look at it, but essentially that was the last moment before we went from that divergent type thinking into being convergent, or in layman's terms, start to be what people are telling me I'm supposed to be. So that's from the system itself, that's from the parents, that's from the bullies at school. And so that's where the love your weird comes from. I actually got that idea the first time I went to on-site. While I was there,
it's great.
Because one of the things besides the phone I was going to say is that you're not allowed to say what you do for a living. So it was the first time that I was stripped from that narrative. And so that was big. That changed my life by itself, because I had to spend a week with other successful people. And none of us could talk about it. And the connections with yourself and with the other people that happen as a result of that are profound.
Yeah.
And I've tried to bring that as much as possible into the work I do with addicts and alcoholics. And now, you know, as a thought leader doing keynotes around the country.
Yeah, it's great. And just to reiterate it, so I really loved how you said that it's stripping away pretense. So I think so many men today are living lives where they're surrounded by pretense. And if you're living, that makes a lot more sense to me now, your take on authenticity, because it's when you're surrounded by pretense and you're playing the game of the pretense, whatever it is, no one, you're not congruent with yourself. Like there's internal stress that's created because deep down you know that it's codependency. You're codependent to the whole world around you is what it is. So yeah, that kills you. I mean, anyway, so that's a really good clarification. I really like the way you stated that, because I think that's the heart of what authenticity should mean, is removing the pretenses. And I think where, you know, you kind of alluded to, you can talk about your job. It's really easy for men, especially when we're young, right? Coming out of boyhood, young men, you're in your early 20s, you're ready to take on the world and conquer whatever it is you've decided you want to go do, you know, whatever your profession is and things like that. We latch onto that really easily. And so then that you almost create your own pretense in a way if you're not careful, because you sacrifice who you really are in the name of your job or your career or whatever. And that can really lead you down a path of getting stuck into a corner in a way. So thanks for sharing, you know, very openly about that journey for you, and then expanding upon it with, you know, on-site and that kind of stuff. So I think Justin's got something for you now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so authenticity is such a crazy thing. So if you're being not only authentic to other people, but to yourself, authenticity and failure run hand in hand. And I think that the more you fail and the more you're authentic to yourself about those failures, the more you grow. So if you fail and you're authentic about the way you feel, and you're not afraid about, you know, the things that you're feeling and the things that you're going through, and you charge at it kind of head on, it comes back to like Mason Sawyer. He's one of our guests that came on. I don't know if you got to see that episode, but he talks about the analogy in the buffalo and the cattle. The cattle run with the storm. They stay in the storm longer, whereas the buffalo charge the storm, get through it, and reap the rewards quicker. If you're authentic with yourself, you're like, look, I already know what my problems are. I know what my failures are. I know what these are. I know what this, and this are. I know who my true self is. I figured that out. And it took a long time and a lot of work. I can now go through to the next point in my life. Whereas if you're not authentic with yourself, you're still carrying baggage, which is slowing you down and keeping you in that storm longer. And that's something that a lot of men don't realize, is that you carry baggage. Your baggage has to be dealt with, no matter if it's self-harm, no matter if it's caused by others or the visions or the views of others, or your self-perception, because self-perception is a big thing too. You know, your self-perception of your community, that's a big thing. But I know as a local community person of your community, I don't think those things about you. I think you're pretty cool, but you know, that's just personal opinion. But that being said, like, you know, there's a lot of things to overcome, and failure leads to successes. And I think that's definitely something that I wanted to say about the authenticity thing, because you kind of spoke a little bit about it. You know, authenticity is something you kind of live by. And I really appreciate that. That's not a word that's really used much anymore. And people are not authentic. Let's talk about that. Like social media, people are so fake. You only see the good in their lives. You don't see the bad. Like and I'll tell you what, the most incredible stories and the coolest people on any social media platform, I don't care what you say, are the people who have failed, who have a cool story, who have been through the mud and the muck and aren't afraid to be authentic about that. It's the people who are fake that people start to realize, they're like, look at this person. Like, this is kind of over the top, you know, or this is getting a little, you know, this is definitely fake, or like their life can't be that good. You know what I mean? Because yeah, at the end of the day, if you're rich, doesn't make you happy. Does it make it easier? Sure. I'd rather cry in a Ferrari than, you know, in nothing. But at the end of the day, like, you're rich based off of what you find value in.
All right,
You
you're
know?
pretty tall. You're having a hard time getting in one.
Anyone that says that money doesn't buy you happiness, look at the fucking smile on my face. Not just me.
A Lamborghini I would rather cry in a Lamborghini than a Camry. I'm just putting it that way.
Yeah,
but,
just putting it out there, okay?
We're never going to get that Toyota sponsorship, Justin. What are we doing?
I mean, he drives one of the best Toyotas out there. So
yeah, by default. Yeah, you wouldn't think it. I didn't pick it. Okay, so my wife always wanted a Land Cruiser. I don't know. By the way, sorry, Toyota, but $85,000 for a Toyota is not worth it. If you got $85,000 to spend, guys, go buy something else. I'm just going to tell you straight up. It's cool. Yeah, if you're like
pro, I love it.
If you're a diehard Toyota fan, then like by all means, it's like the climax, right? But like, I don't give two shits about Toyota, and so anyway, my wife just had to have it, and then she got it, and then realized, oh, I need a Denali now. So like, okay, so like I have this one. It's like, it's ridiculous.
So that's why you drive it.
And then ever since I sold my company, I'm like, you know what? Like I kind of think like a farmer now, right? Like I'm like, this car's fine, like whatever, you know. And once you get over 40,
point A to point B, never breaks down. Good to go.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a bad car. Like to all the Toyota people out there, look at this schmuck. You know, it's like, what a snob. You know what I'm saying? That's some people's dream car. You know, so I'm not trying to be mean or anything. I just think that they could do better for 85. I'm just saying. GM has way better features for 85,000. So, God bless America. What's left of it?
Yeah.
Right.
That'll be another episode. We'll have to.
Yeah. Right.
We'll have to contain that to another episode. You're gonna get me wound up on that one. So, I wanted to bring it back to blended family stuff. So,
hey, 1 second. I have a princess that has a question.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not a princess. What is it, baby? What's your question?
Time to take a bath.
It is? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I'm coming. We're almost done with our podcast. Okay, baby?
Time for everyone to take a bath.
Time for everybody to take a bath. Apparently, it's time for everybody to take a bath, guys.
Gotcha.
Good to know. All right. Very nice.
Look.
No.
She's too shy. She's too shy. But
nah, okay.
Yeah, not shy. Okay.
You want to get on?
I think we're at a 50% interruption rate, right? In our podcast, about half of them have had a kid jump in at some point.
Yeah, of course. If you're going to do a
podcast, it has to.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Yeah.
Par for the course.
Kid interrupting at 9:00 at night.
Yeah.
And if they're not wearing an Elsa dress and fake blonde hair, it's not real.
Yeah, this one's real blonde hair, just in her panties though. So I'm kind of glad it didn't get on video. You know, you never know what's going to leak these days.
Yeah.
Love you.
Yeah, there's some crazy people in this world.
Yeah, I'll be there in a minute, baby.
Okay, love you.
Love you too. All right. Well, there you have it. Okay. So, Brandon, I feel like you had some questions. I feel like you're kind of falling asleep over there. So you got to jump in on this thing. What's going on, man?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of get us back on track. You were a serial entrepreneur before you started doing keynote speaking and all that stuff. So what made you decide to go from being a highly successful entrepreneur to changing to more of an altruistic lifestyle that's purpose driven? What shifted you that way?
So it was actually kind of going back to my roots. So you got to think about it like this. When I was 5 years old, I got moved to Pittsburgh, Beaver Falls to be exact, home of Joe Namath. We went there for 3 years, and that was where my dad went to seminary, learned how to run homeless shelters and do inner city missions. So I grew up till I was 18 in inner city missions, actually helping poor people that were in need. So when you get out of that, two things happened. First of all, my dad got kicked out of his ministry at 18. So not only was I poor as a kid, then he got kicked out of the ministry. I was like, screw this. I'm never doing anything remotely like this. So I went the other direction. So I didn't originally, what I wanted was I didn't want to feel what it felt like to be poor anymore. The anxiety that came with it, like, my mom kind of wore it on her sleeve, but I love you, Mom. But, that was a thing that affects kids. And so I grew up, I was like, I'm not going to be like this. And they had less than other people for a good reason, but still, like, and I kind of walked away from it. Like, was it a good enough reason? Like, this is what you get at the end, is a kick out the door. So that kind of jaded me for a while. That was what really ramped up my alcoholism, drug addiction. I just was like, threw the towel in on a lot of that stuff. So for about 10 years, there was no altruism. It was still deeply rooted inside of me though. So once I started doing a business that I could really believe in, because for a while I basically was in the mortgage business. Okay. And I think I talk about this in the books, and it's one of those things where I went through this season leading up to, by the way, 2008. So I got sober the same year that the entire world economics melted down. I'm not saying that I had anything to do with the meltdown. I'm just saying that the timing is, uncanny. So, I had become kind of like the Lafayette Wolf of Wall Street. And like, I wasn't actually Wolf of Wall Street level, if any federal people are watching this. But and it may be on the phone. I may already be tapped. Who knows? But whatever. So I went through this time when I was just like, oh, I don't need it. I don't need to answer to anybody. I went through that. Like, I raged the 20s mentality. I went full throttle. You know what I'm saying? Did it all, blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't so much that it was like this, like, wake up call where I was a certain way my whole life, and then I had this like white light moment. Now I need to like give my life to altruism. It was over time, and what actually got me back connected with altruism was getting sober. Okay, so basically, getting sober and realizing that the only way to stay sober is to help other people get sober, and the magic that happens from that—that's what reawoke. Okay, this is the grit, because I wasn't buying anything they were selling from a religious standpoint anymore. I was totally jaded with all that, but I was like, this right here, this is the guts of unconditional love, and like what was being actually said before it was added. All this crap got added on top of it. Okay. And I'm not going to get into religion tonight, but like, for me, the big thing was that I knew that I had a higher calling. I always knew that. Whether I really did or didn't, I don't know, but I had it just baked into me. So I started to work that out with doing the volunteering for helping other people get sober, and then that actually changed my life a bit. And what I realized was that, wow, there's a lot more to unlocking this. In fact, I was trying to figure out, how do you make money and be successful in America and feel like you're living a mission? That's a very difficult thing. Okay. And you're not going to pull that off at just volunteering at church. It's not going to happen. It's not the same as when you go to Africa and build an orphanage, or go to Mexico and build houses, or all those things that some of us have got to experience. I went to 40 countries before I was 25, mostly on mission trips, right? So this was pumped in, right? And that's where the book idea came. I started writing the book probably in 2013. It took me 3 years to write it. It came out in 2016, the first one. But I knew I wanted to try to figure out a way to help others at a larger scale. So I still think it's so important to have what I call a ground game. And my ground game is that like just tonight, like, I mean, I've probably talked to 4 or 5 guys this evening. I probably owe a couple more. Like I'm never going to let go of that ground game of helping other alcoholics and drug addicts get sober. I'm never letting that go. Cause the second I do and think that the only game is the books, or the only game is, maybe I'll just take care of my family, or the only game is the keynotes. It's like, no, if the secret to my success straight up for the last 15 years is that I keep a strong ground game. And
it's playing offense. Like you're essentially taking care of yourself, getting in the routine to avoid the temptation or the distractions or whatever, so that you're waking up and getting after it on your mission. It keeps you on track. And
100%. And there's not that many opportunities to do that in America. And that's what's so profound about the system that, I can't mention which system it is. You can imagine which one it is, but not allowed to mention it in the press. But what I will tell you is that even people like Mother Teresa have mentioned that system as one of the greatest gifts that Western civilization has given to spirituality. And that's from Mother Teresa herself. So there's some stuff there, and I've got to live that. And so what happens is that I want to live an extraordinary life. I want to live an extraordinary existence. Okay. 1 wife isn't enough. I got to have 2. 3 kids isn't enough. I got to have 6. 1 business enough. I got to have 5. You see what I'm saying? I want to live at that level. Right. And I'm going to tell you, you have to match that level of, well, quite frankly, calamity and chaos with something. You got to match that. And if you don't, you end up defaulting to like, oh, I'm going to just gamble my feelings away. I'm going to eat my feelings away. I'm going to snort my feelings away, or I'm going to screw my feelings away. That's what ends up happening as a default, right? Because you want this extraordinary life, you want this big life, but like you don't have anything to like match it with. And what I have found is that like you can match it, but you got to lean into it. And you've got to match that with something else. And that's what happened for me, is that I replaced one drug for another drug. And that drug is the limitless drug. And that drug essentially is a deeper connection with a power that's greater than you. Okay. Yep. You call it what you want, but that is the limitless drug, is an ongoing connection to a much more powerful thing than you. And what I have found is that nothing unlocks that as much as helping somebody that's poor with your hands, not with your check.
And I think one of the things that you had mentioned was that you're purposely and intentionally surrounding yourself with people that are equally hungry and the same growth mindset that you're trying to achieve, right? You have people around you that are also trying to be the best versions of themselves and trying to get free of whatever addiction that they're suffering from. And so in your book, in step 4, you use MJ as an example of someone who builds and rebuilds his team. And so I feel like that's kind of your way of how you've built and rebuilt your team, because, he had to surround himself with the best quality of team players, right? And so my question to you is, who did you surround yourself with to win, and how did you find them?
Yeah. So, most of the time they found me. Now, they didn't Google me or actually come find me, but what it is that happened was that my circumstances led me to them. Now, I had to be open-minded, and for the most part, I had to be desperate. So my team ended up being a combination of like, my sponsor was and is one, my spouse is one. From a business standpoint, I was blessed to get a mentor in 2010. I mentioned some of these folks in the book. And so my mentor, it really came to me on that one, but I leaned into it and really held on and really nurtured that relationship. But you need a mentor, if not multiples. You got to be taking direction from someone. Because they don't all have to have the answers. Usually it's a combination. It really what it boils down to is that the reason why I put that in there about the team being so important, and I use Michael Jordan as an example just to get people's attention, right? But at the end of the day, it's true for all of us. The team piece is critical, because that's the part where I have to be humble enough to take direction, willing to take direction, willing to have somebody give me an idea that's not my idea. And that's really important. And this idea of getting out of yourself while being true to yourself is kind of this like weird paradoxical thing that we all live through every day. And being able to strike a balance there is key.
Yeah, you've got to be stretched and challenged by someone that can
and
draw
you
out
have
of
to,
you.
And you have to be able to battle test whatever great ideas. I always tell the guys I work with, it's like, look, if you got a good idea, give me a call. Talk to me about it before you do, right? If you got a great idea, you need to come find my ass. Because essentially, like, that's where we F it up, is with our great ideas. And I always say, if the idea is that great, I should be able to run it by somebody that's in my circle, and it's still a great idea. Justin, I feel like you had some sort of mic drop thing. Or Brandon, did I answer that?
Yes, you did. You did great. And
I'm just looking at this chat. I'm like, oh my God, Justin.
Gold star.
We're losing him.
You did it.
We lost
him. I think we did lose him. So I think one of the best, you had a quote in your book, and it's, if Thomas Edison had quit when things got tough, we might all still be in the dark. And I thought that was such a great quote. So what made you almost quit in your past, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of moments of almost quitting. When my first business failed, I thought that was the end. I thought that was the one shot that I was going to have an opportunity to make money, and I was going to have to go back to being poor. I walked to work for a year, sold my sports car, and I did that because I believed in something that I needed to do next, which was create the next company, which was Pretense. It was a make-believe company, and we made clients believe in us, and then we made the whole community believe in the client's product, whatever it was. Essentially, it was branding, but that was a really pivotal moment for me when kind of the world fell apart, and I had to, have lost the business, lost one of the things I loved a lot, which was drugs. And then I also, went through loss with divorce, and then I also had other companies fail. It wasn't until my fifth company that I really found success and, had that level of growth that we saw from continuing to learn from the previous iterations and learn from the failures. I do take the Edison concept very seriously, that he didn't fail 10,000 times or however many experiments he did. He just found 9,999 ways that didn't work. And so, that concept is important to note, by the way. Like, if you want to do something great, you need to have a very good relationship with failure. You need to see it as an opportunity every single time. And as much as it hurts, you've got to really look for opportunities to get uncomfortable. One of my friends, who's also a thought leader, has a book called Hunting Discomfort. And that's Sterling Hawkins, obviously. And he and I have gone through similar things, and we kind of see eye to eye on that is a non-negotiable. If you want to be successful, you want to grow, you're going to have to be authentic. You're going to have to get honest about the problem. You're going to have to be able to imagine a world that doesn't exist yet. And then you're going to have to be very selfless in the journey along the way.
It's good. I was going to ask if you think that the Edison principle and kind of just not giving up like that, how that applies to fatherhood. Because I think it's really easy to connect that to like business ventures and sports and stuff, but it's a little bit more nebulous when it comes to fatherhood, right? So
well, first of all, fatherhood is every night. So it's like, however many nights I've had kids, that's how many nights have failed. But yeah, kids, what? Yeah, like, I mean, that every turn, they're like reminding you of your frailty, your weaknesses, and then the more you have of them, the more like bright the freaking mirror is on like who you are, and it's just like you can't hide because you're literally watching yourself walk around. It's like, what?
My wife and I joke all the time when our daughter acts a certain way. I'm like, oh, she gets that from you, that's from me. Like, it's friendly, it's not accusing or whatever, but Yeah, we're both like, yeah, that's us. Guilty. But I think, speaking
absolutely.
of Pretense, tying it all together too with Pretense, I think that's a huge Pretense, especially for like newer parents, that you're going to like magically have it all figured out and you're never going to mess it up and all that kind of stuff. And I remember like some of for me, the hardest moments where I felt like I couldn't come back from it is when I messed something up as dad, raised your voice too much, or you did something you really regret. The first time that happens, there's that moment of like, oh my gosh, there's no coming back from this. I'm the worst dad ever. And I think every man has a moment like that, probably multiple moments like that. And I just want to shatter that pretense that, if you're doing your best and you're genuinely trying to learn from it and you make amends and you apologize for when you make those mistakes, like your kid needs you still in the fight. They don't need you to disappear. And
I think that's a misconception, obviously, is that we're supposed to be these perfect parents, and it's like this. Like, first of all, what is a perfect parent? Clearly, none of us, our parents were, and we still love some of them. And I think the hardest thing as a parent is to be willing to really put myself back in where was I at 5 years old, and what would I have wanted to be taught, knowing everything I know now. And like, you got to put yourself back there. And that's not always easy to honestly do that. But really, at the end of the day, the best we're going to do with these kids is, and this is kind of, I don't have a lot of rules in the house, but I do want to try to teach 3 core values, and everything that we do have rules around, it's around these, and it's pretty simple. Kindness, right? So that means like, you're not going to hit anybody. You're not going to yell at the other kids or, whatever. Gratitude, which means that like, you're looking for opportunities to be grateful, and respect. I mean, if you get those 3 things as a parent, like, congratulations. I mean, that's
yeah,
we have these big ideas of what we want for kids. Like, dude, you do that for a kid. Like, you have a kid that grows up and they're grateful and they're kind and they're,
that gives them the foundation
different
to when
virtues
they become an
that you want.
adult. Yeah. When they're an adult, if that's their foundation, they'll be able to figure out the things
that
they
helps
need to
us
learn.
not have too many other pretenses, because it's easy
Right.
to get into a lot of rules, and it's annoying. Like, some of the stuff the kids do is freaking annoying. But then all this work I've been doing of researching how, like, hey, you're an adult now, you want to figure out how to unlock authenticity, selflessness, and imagination, and I'm taking you back to when you were 5. It's hard for it. That's a real accountability for me. When I come home, my wife knows my body of work. She knows my content. So like, she likes to remind me sometimes. It's like, so that's probably been one of the biggest things. It's the right kind of accountability, because it's something I'm passionate about. So it's been interesting as I've done more of my own inner child work. And then now, like, I'm kind of the spokesperson for inner child work a little bit. It's definitely different when the litmus test is a live 5-year-old.
Yeah.
My wife has made a really good point a couple times. She said, don't make the title of your podcast ironic. If I'm hanging out with my kid and playing on my phone, I'm like, I am not being present.
Touche, Kim.
Gosh, you got me. That's so good.
Kim's a monster, man. She gets you. She knows you
Dude,
too well.
exactly. No, that's they love to drop that in. And it's always in these moments where they're like, oh, you're being real authentic right now. Like, I mean, she's dropped that a couple times, and like, I lost my shit a little bit. I was like, okay, I got to go outside and have a cigarette.
Way to be present, Dustin.
So yeah, just come down the street and come talk to me, bro.
Yeah. No, like, those, like, the one thing, like, I'm kind of like Marty McFly, when they would get him cornered and they'd call him Yella or Chicken. Y'all remember that? Back to the Future. Kids,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
That-
100%.
So my, like, Yellow Chicken thing, that's like, call me a liar one more time. You know what I'm saying? Or call me inauthentic one more time. Like, I'm wrecking my arm. I can't play guitar anymore.
It's so funny. So like, we just covered a few topics that I kind of want to reiterate that. So we talked about a little bit about, surrounding yourself and who you surround yourself in the community you have is such a big impact on who you are, not only as a man or as an entrepreneur or, this, that, or the other, as a father. And we don't think about that concept. We don't grasp that concept enough, that the men we keep around us mold us. And, we talked about it before the show, but masculinity, holding ourselves accountable, That's part of masculinity. You know, if we have masculine men around us who also hold us accountable, they're letting us know, hey, you screwed up. But guess what? That's part of fatherhood. Like having a support group. And I challenge anybody listening to this, please join our Discord. Please join any of our socials. Follow us. We want to hear from you guys, because someone like Frankie has been through it. They understand what you are going through. If this is similar to your story, and I want fathers to understand, like every father fails. Every father needs community. Every father needs masculine men around them, because if you don't have those things as a man, it's you don't have someone holding you accountable. You don't have someone help you. Yes, you don't have someone to help you grow on a daily basis and give you the push when you're not ready to be pushed. Like it's so much more than just, hey, you know, we need accountability. We need good people around us. Like it's a combination of everything. And I don't think that's something that a lot of men recognize or grasp the fact of, is like, you need a community, you need a tribe, you need people who are lions, you need people who are softer, because when you're being an idiot or an a-hole, they need you to calm the hell down and be like, all right, look, you know, you're messing up. This is, you're going at this a little aggressive. Or if you're not being aggressive enough, you need, like, hey, you want your kid to be tougher? Do this. Get on the mat with them. Like Cody Jefferson said, he doesn't just, you know, teach and preach wrestling. He gets on the mat with his kids. Like,
yeah,
that's what a father should do, is be hands-on, be present, you know, be part of it. And that's what we kind of try to preach. But like, that's something that we don't really drive home a lot. And that's something I just kind of wanted to say, because some of the things you have said has resonated with all those different things. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to touch on, because those things combined are so much more powerful than one or the other.
No doubt. No doubt. So Frankie, what is in your eyes, the most rewarding thing about being a father?
Let me think about that. I hate to say this, but I think like that feeling of being wanted is just pretty selfishly profound. Especially at the ages I have my kids in the house right now. It's just like it's actually a double-edged sword, because a lot of times it's a lot when they want your attention, you know, and it can be overwhelming. But I've learned to really like try to lean into it, because I know that it's not going to last forever, and I know that literally every parent wishes they had it back. So you hear these things from people, and there's two things I've heard over and over again from literally every parent I've ever met. And so I have to assume that this is the truth. And so far it has proven that. One is that it goes very fast. And two is that like you miss it when it's gone. So I try to think about that anytime like I'm feeling overwhelmed, like maybe I'm stressed out, or like I'm trying to work on like some new talk or some project or launch a company or blah, 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 all the stuff that like we work on, and they really want my attention. I try to really remember it in those moments, that there's not that much time left. I mean, essentially there's 13 more years for the youngest to be out. There's only 5 for my oldest to be out the house. And so I gotta stay present in this, because I'm not getting it back. And I already know what it feels like to live with regrets. And like in those moments, I try to remember what that feels like and not create a new regret.
That's good, man. I like that.
That's powerful.
Any final fatherly advice for all the dads out there?
Yeah. Don't fuck it up. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what they tell you when you take command.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like the best fatherly advice is show the fuck up. You know, that's for real. Like, don't worry about fucking it up. You'll do that. But just show up, man. You got to show up. And sometimes I got to put the phone down, and I just have to be in the moment and say that it's just worth because I'm not looking on my phone when I've met with billionaires. Okay. And I haven't got to meet with that many billionaires, but when I have, after I was done, like, peeing my pants because I was so nervous, I didn't have my phone out. Okay. Absolutely, positively did not have my phone out. I have no idea what happened on my phone for that hour. I can assure you that. And so am I willing to give that same thing to my kid? It's, I'm sure you guys talk about the phone thing a lot on this podcast, but like it's a thing. And just showing up for them and being present. I mean, that's the stuff that everybody talks about. Nobody. When I went to onsite, George, you probably can experience this. I didn't meet one person that was like, "Oh, I'm so hurt because my parents got divorced." No, everybody that was like had me in their sculpt as their father, as they're beating the heck out of a with a fake bat, imagining that I'm their father. Every single one of them, it was because they felt abandoned. Their father or their mother wasn't there for them. Period. They don't give a shit about the other stuff. They don't give a shit about the details. It's like either we're there for them or they were there for us or they weren't. It's not something that you can like shortchange. And then adding like pony rides and buying them stuff only creates more anxiety. And then now all of a sudden you have this adult kid and you're wondering, oh, why don't they want to talk to me? Why don't they like me? It's like, because like they grew up and realized like what the world really is and realized like you're kind of not the person that they want to hang out with now that they've grown up and had the choice. And I think that's the nightmare, right? Is that like you create this space where your kid doesn't feel like they want to come back to you. And I can tell you for sure for my wife and me right behind her, but I mean, my wife has one objective in this life, and that is like create children that want to come home when they get older, create a space, create a space where people want to come home. That's the freaking limitless. And there's going to be seasons. Like, I mean, I pretty much 18 to 25, I pretty much is a throwaway years. Like if your kids don't want to come back that much during 18 to 25, that doesn't even count. Like,
they got a little freedom. Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't even count.
Well, they're out starting to build their life. I mean,
they're figuring themselves out at that point. So it's a little different.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is like, don't find your identity in your kids. Like, for God's sakes, like that was one thing my parents never did. And that was the greatest gift they gave us. My brother's a doctor. I've done a couple things. My other brother is an entrepreneur. My sister is a psychologist. Like, so it's not like we haven't excelled, and it wasn't from any pressure from them whatsoever. And we always knew we could be whatever we wanted to be. And that was a gift that they gave us, and I'm better for it.
That's awesome, man. All right, so I got one final question for you, and this is something we try to ask every dad. What is a story or a core memory that you have with your kids that just really sticks out to you like a sore thumb that you really just appreciated or you think about quite often?
Man, that's a good one. Gosh. There's so many.
It's hard because you have to choose from so many, but just one that comes up quick. There you go.
I keep thinking about Christmas at the other house that we have on the lake that we did this last year, and some of the adventures we've had out there. I don't know why that comes to mind, because I feel like it's like it was getting that space and that property was about unlocking some more of the adventure that we have. I just saw your chat.
Dustin, I'm going to bust Dustin out. He said,
yeah, that's good.
Say it, Dustin. You got to say
it. Which kid do you pick that you love the most out of the six?
Yeah, notice how I didn't.
Whichever kid you say the memory for, you obviously love the other five less, right? So,
no.
We put you on the spot. It's a no-win situation.
I only grabbed I wasn't even trying to grab for memories that were a single kid. No. I probably could do it easier if I did that, but I wasn't even going there.
That, or we're going to have to give 6 memories either way.
Yeah. So. There's only one cardinal rule in my house, and that, and it's not my rule. It's, I don't know whose rule it is, but like, everybody's super careful about that. And then if the other spouse has a sneaking suspicion of who the favorite is, like, God forbid, because never have my wife and I had the same favorite. Like, obviously nobody has a favorite, but I mean, come on, who are we kidding, guys? Everybody knows what their favorite is. We just don't talk about it. All right. So, and I'm sure
it's unspoken.
talk about it.
Well, 100% have a favorite because I only have one. So
Yeah,
There you go.
congratulations. That's total cop out. Total cop out, but that's fine. Yeah, so I you know, I do love them all in different ways. So the more I go as a father, I can't say that I have a favorite. There's different moments that are going to be amazing with your kid, and I could go on and on. But
back to what you were talking about. You're
yeah.
talking
So what I was talking about was
memories,
yeah, basically it is because we got that space to create a sense of community, to get offline, to go out on the boat, and to dig. Like, because you live in our neighborhood, Justin. Like, it's not exactly like a neighborhood where people just get to dig dirt and crap like that. And my boys like love to pee in.
You
the
don't get
yard
invited to the get
and
together?
dig. Yeah, no, they're like
Just kidding.
effing up the landscaping. I don't even know why Tracy got the number for your landscaping guy, because like the kids are just gonna F it up. So it's like I had to get this other property where they can like dig holes to China and just be kids. And that's been some pretty special memories as a commune, because once you have 8 people, you're, I think, technically a commune. I don't even think I'm actually breaking the neighborhood, what do they call that? The homeowners association. I'm fairly confident I'm breaking it. They actually called me, the guy across the street. I don't know. He's not going to watch this because
I know who he is. I'm not going to name names, but yes.
Okay.
I'm familiar.
Okay. So apparently you're only supposed to have 2 trash cans. All right. Well, I have a big house. I have 3 trash cans and a recycling bin. All right. The guy got my trash cans picked up. Like I had an assistant that was working in the home at the time. Yeah. So she called the utilities and said, yeah, the homeowner association called it in. Like, what? I bought that trash can. Like, what are you talking about? Anyway, I got it added. And then my assistant at the time, like, had some words with old boy. And so, they made an exception, but
now I want to go put out 3 and just fill them with cinder blocks and just see what happens.
Dude, trust me, put out 3 plus a recycling bin. You're in deep water with the homeowner association.
Speaking of Pretense.
Yeah, right?
Love it.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Frankie, we really appreciate you coming on and just your candor and sharing your story. But before we go, want to let you plug where the best place is for people to follow you and get in touch with you. So I know you got the website, frankierusso.com.
Yep.
Anywhere else people should go to look for you, or is that pretty much the best place?
Anywhere but Reddit.
I love it.
So you're on Twitter, X, and Instagram and all that kind of stuff
my
too.
books and all the places books are sold. And yeah, so yeah, Frankie Russo. I ended up having to pay a lot of money just to get my own name. Bunch of pirates. I used to have the hyphen, and I was like, let's just keep it simple. It's
bunch of capitalists.
Yo, my God, catch what's killing the country.
That's right.
Damn capitalists, But yeah, man, frankierusso.com. It's easy. I monitor the social media and have some help with that. So, if you reach out, I'm always happy to chat and talk. And, but yeah, in general, looks like they're turning down the lights in here.
You don't have to
this
go
was
home.
awesome.
You can stay here.
Yeah, exactly. Like I actually am home. But they're clearly sending me the message. Like, go to bed. This was awesome, guys. This was a lot of fun, and I hope this was helpful for you guys. I feel like we definitely leaned in. I don't know if I've said all of this stuff in one recording before, so minus the Audible book, I guess. But even that doesn't have some of this good stuff. So
it's good, man. No, it was a real pleasure. And again, we just thank you for sharing your story with our audience and being transparent. So we'll live authentically. And all right, without further ado, dads, let's start climbing the mountain together. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify to catch all of our amazing episodes. We will see you in the next one.